I'm Richard Jack Smith of Real Talk Movie Reviews. One of the most fun aspects of being a critic is that year in, year out, I get to put together lists of the best and the worst films, but also, just every once in a while, I get to work on decade best lists and then also the worst. And that can be a very telling thing, in that when you're trying to sum up a particular decade, a 10-year span, based on just one film as an example of brilliance or worthlessness, a lot of introspection is called for. And in fact, when I chose Black Hat, Michael Mann's film, as the best of its decade, I sat on that decision for 6 months. So this is something that I take very, very seriously. So far I've covered the greatest film scores of the 20th century. I'll also be doing another video which is the worst film scores of the 20th century. Titles such as Howard Shore's The Silence of the Lambs, Trevor Jones's Runaway Train, and Lalo Schifrin's The Hellstrom Chronicle could end up in that list. I chose Joker, Todd Phillips' film, as the worst of its decade. Came out in 2019. I haven't picked a film score for the first decade of this millennium, that being the year 2000 to 2009. But today I'm going to be concentrating on motion pictures during that time period. And indeed, there were many choices here. Narrowing it down to just 5, I came up with the following nominees, leaving out, of course, the one which ultimately got. So, of the 4 which didn't quite make the best film of the decade, but came very, very close, I'll start with Seabiscuit, Gary Ross's film, released in 2003, nominated for 7 Academy Awards. I remember seeing this in the cinema with my father. Fantastic experience. I've seen it many, many, many times in the years since. I even chose it as one of the 4 films for my university dissertation on the subject of cinematography. So I spent a long time, watching the film and how it was done, and it was a great experience overall. So Seabiscuit is the first nominee. For the second nominee, it was the film which completely took the world by storm. It closed at a decade in high fashion. Indeed, we're still waiting for the sequels, and that's James Cameron's Avatar. A stunning example of filmmaking and storytelling. I have seen the film in 3D, although my eyes can't adjust to it very well. I was able to see this before it became an insoluble problem for me, the 3D aspect, and it's probably the best example of that use of technology ever. Very few come close to it. So James Cameron's Avatar comes in second place, and a special shout out to Stephen Lang's character in that film, who is a brilliant actor. Third nominee, Ridley Scott's Gladiator, a film which reinvented the historical epic and turned Russell Crowe overnight into a megastar, according to film critic Barry Norman, and I agree with his review wholeheartedly. And as for the final nominee, this might surprise you, Sam Mendes' Road to Perdition. Now, I didn't like American Beauty, and all of the previews for Road to Perdition just seemed to be more of the same. It seemed to be a bit drab, a little bit, on the dark side, very low key. I saw a clip of its Oscar win at the Academy Awards for Best Cinematography. That's the rain, scene in the rain at night between Paul Newman and Tom Hanks, and it looked really amazing. And then when I finally saw the film, I loved it from beginning to end. I've seen it dozens of times since then. It's one of my all-time favourite movies, with one of Hanks's best performances. I think he could have got a nomination for that if there had been a great push for it. I mean, Paul Newman got nominated, and he was a screen legend. So those are the 4 nominees for the best film score of the decade. So now, what film pushed past all of those and just nudged forward and won by a nose? Well, that was none other than Syriana, directed by Stephen Gaghan, starring George Clooney, Matt Damon, Jeffrey Wright, Christopher Plummer, Alexander Siddig, Tim Blake Nelson, and Mark Strong. Gotta admire the tenacity of writer-director Stephen Gaghan. Most, if not all, movies are made seeking a healthy return on investment. If a picture costs $50 million to make, then it must secure at least $150 million in order to break even. The content can be fairly disposable or recyclable depending upon what puts bums on seats. Yet Syriana exists for another reason entirely, to make us think. The topics are oil and terrorism. Using the anthology format, Gagan reveals how individual or collective actions, i.e. being unemployed, losing a missile, or revealing corrupt persons during a merger, can have ramifications in other places. Take the missile for example. It symbolises absolute power being abused and how ignoring a potential threat can impart global ramifications. Syriana is and may always remain a timely political discourse. Film of the decade? Try film of the century. I am Richard Jack Smith. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.